We're gonna look at some more mouse studies, but in particular ones that involved the optogenetic stimulation of the reward pathway to just show how motivating it is to seek out a particular reward. So to understand this next section, I need you to understand the experimental protocol that they used. These mice are in this little box here, one mouse at a time. He's got that channel rhodopsin, the light activated channel that is now being expressed in central amygdala in most of these studies, which is another part of the reward pathway. Okay, so when the light shines, he's got his little mouse hat on that we saw in class the other day, and when that light shines, it's activating the central amygdala part of that reward pathway. Okay, so mouse here. And then there are these like levers that this mouse pushes on, okay? If he pushes on one lever, he's just gonna get table sugar, sucrose, okay? So the mouse, like, he has to push the lever a certain amount of times, I kind of forget how many times, and after a while, after a period of pushing, the sugar pellet comes out. There's a little sugar pellet that comes out here, and there's a tone that is expressed. Okay, same thing in the second situation, okay, but in this case, having that laser, that light activated stimuli, basically depolarize and help fire those reward associated neurons, okay, particularly in the central amygdala, okay. So to show you this another way, and just keep in mind that in what I'm about to show you, the areas are flipped around. They're actually on the opposite side. So here I have my little mouse, okay, with his little light hat. Okay, so again, that light's not hurting him, but it is again activating it's helping to depolarize that channel rhodopsin, which is being expressed in certain neurons of the reward pathway, in particular in the central amygdala. Okay, so here's my little mouse. And we are going to see Barrage. He's a big name in this wanting versus liking situation. Okay, so here's the mouse in the little area. He's pushing on this lever. Okay, and he gets a reward. Plus he gets that light activation. Okay, goes to the other one. The other one, there's the lever, pushes on the lever, eats the lever, and then he gets a reward. Okay? So now after training the mouse a little bit, and the mouse gets free choice between each lever, he's going to keep seeking out. He could go to the other lever, but he keeps seeking out the one that's associated with that dopamine. He wants that reward so much more. The one that's associated with that dopamine. He's like exclusively focused on the one that's activating its reward pathway. He's like chewing on it. Well, you can't see there's little cameras underneath this box that are measuring or like recording his orofacial responses. Okay, but again, he's getting the same reward. He's getting the sugar pellet no matter which lever he's pushing on, but he wants this one that's associated with dopamine. Okay, so, and the reward pathway in particular. Okay, so this slide is based on that particular study and shows kind of the same idea. Okay, so the number of responses, this means how much that mouse went for that particular lever. Okay, that mouse went for the lever associated with the reward pathway plus sucrose so much more than the lever associated with, no significant difference there, associated with the same actual reward, okay, but not having the reward pathway stimulated. Okay, so as it says here, rats developed a powerful distorted choice towards two equivalent sucrose rewards when its delivery was associated with this central amygdala reward pathway stimulation. Okay? With increasing effort requirements, even when they change the protocol to make the mouse have to work even harder for that laser-associated reward, that mouse still just works so hard for it. Okay? That said, when we tried doing the same thing in other regions, like the basolateral amygdala, or without any kind of optogenetic activation of the reward pathway, the mouse didn't work as hard. Okay, so when that reward pathway is activated, okay, those mice, like they just want it so much more, even if it's the same kind of actual reward. Okay. So that's what it says here. By pairing the reward with the optogenetic stimulation of the amygdala, one of the parts that's associated with the reward pathway, the rats became narrowly focused instead of on an equal one. They worked 50% harder for that reward, and that's, like we said, one of the ways we measure wanting. Okay. So on the next slide, we're going to kind of go one step further, and this is really interesting here because this kind of speaks a little bit more to that concept of liking. Okay, so without laser at the borderline, so we're not activating the reward pathway, these mice worked about an equal amount. There's no significant difference between them working for each of those rewards. Sucrose here, sucrose there, I'll take either one of those. Okay, but, and we kind of saw this in the last one, when I paired that sucrose reward with activation of the reward pathway, this mouse worked more than twice as hard. These mice worked, there's 7 mice, worked more than twice as hard for that particular reward. They wanted it so much more when the reward pathway was activated. Okay, what about a different type of reward? What about salt? Okay, so without the laser, there was no significant difference between how hard those mice worked for the salt reward. Okay, but you'll notice they worked a lot less hard than with the sugar reward. Okay, however, if I paired a salt reward, which is inherently less likable, okay, to both humans and mice, if I paired a salt reward with optogenetic activation of the reward pathway, there was a significant difference between how hard that mouse worked for that particular reward. Okay, and the next slide is even more interesting. Okay, so without activation of the reward system, if a mouse has a choice between salt or sugar, guess what it chooses? Okay, it significantly chooses sugar over salt. I'm the same. I guess it depends. Okay. However, if I took that salt reward and paired it with activation of the reward pathway, that mouse worked just as hard for a less likable reward than for a more likable reward. So it shows just how much the reward pathway promotes this wanting, this food-seeking behavior, this like, oh my gosh, give me the food, I'm gonna work so hard for the food. I love this diagram here because it really explains this concept really nicely and funly. Okay, so this is from a classic Winnie the Pooh cartoon, and the question is, what do you like best in the world, Pooh? And so Pooh replies, well, said Pooh, what I like best. And then he had to stop and think. Because although eating honey was a very good thing, he liked eating honey, there was a moment just before you begin to eat it, which was better than when you were eating it. But he didn't know what it was called. It's called wanting. And humans are just set up to want. We're very good at wanting for what isn't present. Okay? And one of the things that we might find in individuals with obesity or individuals that seek out food is they want something other than what's here right now. Okay? Perhaps because what's here right now feels uncomfortable. Okay? So love this quote because again, it just shows that this concept of wanting is so powerful and even reflected in children's cartoons.